So hello everyone, whether you're here with us live or whether you're watching this back. This is the end of the read-along chat on Chronicle of an Hour and a Half. Would you like to introduce yourself, our fantastic author?
Me.
Yes, you?
Yeah. What do I introduce? Me or the book?
Do a bit of both. Just give us a couple of
Well,
sentences on who you are and what the book is.
yeah. I live in Kerala. I live with my mother. I've been living with my mother for long. And I also teach from Monday to Friday on weekdays at a university nearby. It's Calicut University. So it's north of Kerala. Yeah, and I have been writing for a very long time without necessarily finding a publisher.
Mhm.
And this is the fourth one I have completed. So yeah, which is why
Brilliant.
when people tell me that it's your debut, I tell them back, it's not my debut. It's my first published book.
But does it feel, I mean, how does it feel having written four and now having one published? Do you think you'll go forward and try
This
and have
is
the
the
others
fourth. This
published?
is the fourth. Sorry.
Do you think you'll now go forward and try and have the others published after this?
No. I think I have improved, and also in order to improve it's far more easier to write a new one than reworking an old one. Also, I think you more than the quality of the writing, I also think that the conceptualization also improves over a period of time. And if I go back, I would like to reconceptualize them as well, which is very, very difficult because a bad conceptualization cannot be, reviewed to a new shape. So I'm not going back on them. They are gone from me.
No, that absolutely makes sense. So I wonder if you can tell me a little bit about where did the idea for this story, this book, come from?
Well, I'm not very sure. Often people ask me this, not particularly about this book, about anything,
Mhm.
I suppose, but I have no clear answer to that. I have ideas, and I sit down and work it out. For one thing, I think there have been a couple of more cases in Kerala where there have been murders of men or extramarital affairs. In particular, there was a case in 2010 or 11 in a nearby district Calicut. I live in Malappuram district.
Mhm.
So in the nearby district, there was this Shahid Baba murder case. That's what his name was. And this guy was beaten, and then he died 3-4 days later at Calicut Medical College. This has no connection with my novel, and also the circumstances. Also, I do not know details about the case, but and also it happened very, very. I mean, some 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But that certainly have remained on my mind when I was setting out to write this book. But largely, the book started off as Nabi Suma's plight. That's what it was about in the beginning. And I also wanted Rehana to also kind of offer a parallel life who somehow resembles the conditions under which Nabi Suma herself struggles.
Mhm.
But at the same time, the way they respond to the conditions differ. And so, yeah, I wanted to draw some parallel between these two responses, and Nabi Suma herself offers reflections on Rehana also. Yeah, and I also did not want to spend pages on the victim. I was
Mhm.
very, very uninterested in victim. I'm generally very uninterested in victim, and
Okay.
because I think focusing on victim is a is a bit sentimental and political, easily political.
Mhm.
And thinking through the perpetrators, I believe that is to practice a radical sensitivity, not sentimentalism. Nabokov, in his denunciation of Dostoevsky, said that Dostoevsky was a very sentimental writer, and he says that sentimentality is radically different from sensitivity. So I wanted to approach the story, whatever I write, mostly through the perpetrators, if it is, about a crime. Yeah. So this was the broad setting. And then earlier there were far more narrators than is there, at the moment as currently in the book. But then I cut down on them and expanded a few, and it's less it's less chaotic than it was in the original. Yeah,
It's
because also
interesting
it's
to
very
me, though.
difficult to.
I was just going to say, it's interesting to me that you had this real life event in your mind initially, because I suppose one of my questions was going to be was, did you start writing this knowing that that was going to be the ending, or did you ever begin writing it thinking that perhaps there might be a happier ending, or you always knew that was the way it was going to go?
Well, with this novel, there was never a way of arriving at a happy ending. There's unless, so. But generally, I do have a very, very clear idea when I set out to write. I do have a broad arc. I don't want to lose, my way on the 100th page or 150th page. It was I have this is also the learning, of years of writing, that you don't want to lose the story after 100 pages. It can depress you terribly. So when I set out to write, I do have a clear idea about the beginning, about the ending, and the important characters who are going to populate the novel. So when I'm writing, it's actually much more about making, properly crafting the sentences. Novel writing, I believe, I do not know any other writer, but novel writing, as I understand it, is it operates at the sentence level. And each sentence you have to write as if, the health of the whole depends on it. And this is how I do it. So I take my sentences seriously. Story, I can do the story. It doesn't matter. I mean, if I have a clear idea what I'm going to write, the sentences will strive towards that ending. That's what my belief is, and it has worked so far. It is continuing. It continues to work also.
That's really interesting. And Priya in our chat, who was part of the read along, who read your book,
Okay.
who says that she hasn't yet completed a novel, says that she would love to hear a little bit more about your writing process. So when you're sitting down to write, what's your number one biggest tip for people trying to write?
Okay, these are important questions. So don't wait for inspiration, I would say.
Okay.
It's just a hoax. It's just a hoax by people who are waiting for inspiration. You just wake up, face your blank screen every day of the week, every day of the month, every day of the year. Things will eventually improve if you have idea, if you have right education. Also, this is also, I'm not an English speaking. I'm a Malayalam medium guy, so I learned the English language later.
Okay.
So when I was learning it, one thing that I wanted to make sure was that I wanted to understand what makes great writing great. And I did not want to criticize anything. I wanted to appreciate, and learning to appreciate what makes great works great. What informs their endurance was one of the first thing that I had instructed myself to, educate myself. So this I did, I think, to a good extent. I also learned the language along the way as I appreciated them. But eventually, I think it all comes down to your sentence making capacities. And I believe that most writing fare poorly because the sentence making is so poor. So when you are making sentence writing at the sentence level, I would say that, you develop a healthy intolerance towards adverbs. remove exclamation mark, learn to write without exclamation mark, without semicolon, without parenthesis. Keep the parenthesis at least to absolute minimum, M dashes absolute minimum, colon absolute minimum. Make the stuff work using comma and period as good as you can, which in the long run does discipline you in the proper faith in the word, because the more you rely on these techniques, the more your writing betrays a kind of weakness, and this weakness is very, very evident in many writings, I think.
That's so interesting. No, that's
And don't be afraid also to use adjectives. Don't also be afraid of writing a sentence occasionally for the sake of writing it.
okay.
Eventually, it is incumbent upon a novelist as much as a poet to improve the language, to make the language interesting again. Longinus, the Latin guy, the old world guy, he said that the point of writing poetry is to entrance the reader. This is also what you have to do when you're writing a novel. You have to entrance the reader, not convince. Because Borges once said that literature appeals to people because it does not deal in arguments and counter arguments. And when somebody is telling a story and asking the reader, isn't it so, or isn't it possible, the reader is much more hospitable to that idea. And when you put forward an argument, people have a tendency to counter it. So that hospitality has to be very evident in the story making, which means that you have to strive away from political correctness and your desire to appeal to social scientists in the universities. Let them do their job, you do the storytelling, and don't do righteous preaching. Think in story, don't think through story. Don't turn story into an instrument of something larger than it is.
Okay. I mean, I think that's interesting to me, because I feel like there is kind of a clear message or a learning in Chronicle of an Hour and a Half about perhaps how we use social media, and about kind of how we can get caught up in others' perspectives. Do you not feel that that's the case, that it's not putting anything across morally, or you think it's more open than that for people to interpret?
Well, story as such cannot divorce itself from any moral concerns. Stories are rooted in moralities, and that's not what my point is. The point is that the story as such, as an author, you cannot push forward any particular moral message. Philip Rafe, this he was the husband of Susan Sontag, and he wrote a book called Freud, The Mind of the Moralist, in which the central argument was that Freud was a messenger without a moralizing message. The great United States Supreme Court judge, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., in his 1904 Northern Securities case, in a dissenting note, he said that great cases make bad law.
Yeah.
And this too, I always marry these two. That the Philip Rafe's conclusion that the best way to approach Freud is to read him as a messenger without a moralizing message. Along with this statement by Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., that great cases make bad laws. I think great fiction also make bad laws, and also great fiction also is a messenger without a message. And I do not know how to put it differently, but this is what I mean. Morality will always figure in, but how do you represent evil, for example? How do you represent evil? In order to represent evil, you have to have a clear idea about this person whose setting the society is behaving in this way. And it becomes some kind of an investigation into our species being. We have to, a novelist cannot choose better guys or bad girls. You have to own up even the people with worse characters.
Yeah.
You have to be responsible to your species. You cannot say that this is not my species. This is your species. This
Hmm.
is the guy who is doing, and you have to account for him or her in the novel. And if you're preachy, if you want to put forward a moralizing message in very, very literal terms, I think this is not going to work. It doesn't make literature works, is my understanding, and my understanding is really flawed, but it helps me keep going. It's not something that I argue with people, but this is how I understand how literature works.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's very interesting. And another big question that I had about the book is that weather is such a theme throughout. The weather itself is almost a character. How kind of did you intend to use weather as a metaphor, or did it just kind of evolve into that?
Which character?
No, so more the weather, the idea of the storm, the rain almost
Oh,
becomes
all
on its
right, the
own.
weather.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it,
So the weather, I wanted the weather to bring in something ominous. So the
mhm,
relentless rain has some biblical quality, because Bible, it's a pre-technological age. So most of its very bad signs have to be represented through weather. So
yeah,
I chose weather for one thing. Secondly, Kerala is a place which sees relentless rain for some 6, 7, 8 months. So
okay.
it's the most natural weather for a Malayali, a Keralite. Thirdly, the novel, since it unfolds in an hour and a half, I wanted the weather to be erratic,
Mhm.
and there is no erratic weather except rain in a short
Mm.
span. So because the some of the the plot is somehow dependent in many ways on the changes in the weather, and I wanted that to also figure in. So metaphorically, in terms of utility, the rain was quite the first candidate
Yeah,
when
no,
I
it
set out
works.
to write.
It worked really, really well for that. And so Aditi in the chat has put forward a question from one of our readers. And I think you've touched on this already a little bit, but she says the backdrop of the village and the details were very vivid. Is it inspired by a place you've lived in or been to?
No, no, I didn't understand the second part of the question.
No,
I
that's
don't.
okay. So it's just saying that the village is very vivid. Is it based on somewhere that you yourself have lived?
Yes, this is well. I mean, it's not exact representation, but this is there is the river. There is everything that is explained there is there, probably in a smaller space, because in the novel there is, for example, this is the shape of my village. The terrain is my village, but then my village is not that big. So what I have done is that it expanded that to for example, from the distance from the mosque to Rehana's house, for example, is described as a mile away,
Hmm.
which is not exactly so. So I exaggerated it for the purposes of fiction.
Hmm.
But this is, yes, it's a very familiar terrain, and I lived here all my life. Yes.
Did you find that that made it a more emotional process to write it? If you could kind of picture where it would be happening, did you feel that you had more of a real connection to it?
Well, Kerala is an extremely misogynist society. I mean, it's an
Mm.
extremely misogynist society. It's also it's very funny, because not funny because it's a Kerala on the one hand has a strongly close knit society. It on the one hand, so the moral policing is an aspect of it, that
Okay.
close knit. Yeah. So people can immediately gather in the village, and I mean, if somebody just screams in the village center, there would be 500 people there soon gathered. So it's
Okay.
very dense and very they would respond, people. on the other hand, this also has a strong, this close-knit social setup also has its positive sides also, because nobody goes hungry or nobody lives without a house. So everybody cooperate, nobody goes, nobody dies without getting a treatment, etc. So there is a strong human side also to it, but the misogyny is particularly um, particularly it's very characteristic of that society. So that goes both ways. I at some point would like to also explore the other side of it, because I find the society here is also extremely human in
Mm.
many ways. It's extremely good to know that, I mean, every house, for example, every month at least 1,500 2,000 rupees are given away to various, charity organizations. They would come to your home and people would give.
Okay.
My father was sick, for example, for 8 years. So there is this organization called, I don't remember I'm finding it difficult to now remember. But these charity organizations did help my father, spend time with my father. Very strangers. They just come and share the space. They provide with you the resources if you are not able to pay for it, etc. So there is that strong social, healthy social bond also,
Mhm.
which may not have come up in the novel, but that was not the purpose of the novel.
And so I suppose in the novel you touch on that kind of socialization through WhatsApp, social media.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that there's a strong benefit to having community WhatsApp and social media as well, or do you see it as largely a peril going forward that we're getting ourselves into?
My opinion about the overlance on WhatsApp,
Mm-hmm.
I think the application should be banned immediately without a second thought.
Really?
Yeah, I think people are over communicating. People are expecting somebody else to communicate to you. You're waking up to see if there is some new communication. It's like opening an empty fridge.
Mm-hmm.
There is nothing there, you know it, and you still, keep checking what's in there. It's equivalent to that. I think people are over communicating. We don't have to communicate this much. This is my opinion. I mean, it might have professional side to it. For example, I downloaded WhatsApp in January something. I never used it. So some 3 months ago for the purposes of the promotion of the book. So Arthur is there. Arthur is yeah. So we do have some. Did find some use for it in that respect, but I generally think it's a very bad application. People don't have to communicate this much. Why do you have to communicate this herd? I mean, no, I'm most certain that almost all these people, none of them are Schopenhauer or any.
Mm.
People don't have such a major important thoughts on a daily or minute by minute basis to share to thousands of people, which is what people are doing.
So
Instagram,
Priya
I
said,
find even okay. I mean, at least you're, posting your photographs and you want people to like it. There is some, in a sense, narcissistic element to it, which I do not, find unacceptable. But WhatsApp it's, I don't know. I mean, everything is in WhatsApp.
Priya has said in the chat with a little laughy face, you're away from social media, but your book is so heavily based on social media.
Well, you don't have to be on social media. Social media comes to you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
just like news, you just have to sit in your room. News comes to you.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got another question from a reader, and it is, oh, this is an interesting one. I'm interested to hear what you think on this. So the reader says the last page really hit me when Nabizu said she tried to give her sons everything so that they wouldn't have any wants except sex. And she repents that
Yes.
maybe she should have given that too, since one of her children died wanting that. What was in your mind
Yeah.
while you were writing that?
Well, thank whoever asked that question. It's a very good question. One thing that I have been reading, so there have been lots of reviews coming in newspapers, and I have been reading them. And, I did not find anybody mention this, but this is that particular phrase that I gave my children everything except sex.
Mm-hmm.
I should have given them that too. That basically sums up everything about about Nabi Suma's or monologues. It shows the extent of dependency on mother.
Mm-hmm.
Also, how, especially in Indian case, it's not particularly about Nabi Suma herself, but generally, we emotionally are too reliant on mother to allow her to live in any other way except as a mother. And it seems to Nabi Suma in the particular context that this is the only thing she hadn't given her children. And if this would have saved her son's life,
Mm-hmm.
she was saying that she would have been willing to give them that too. I mean, what else she has not given? That's really the question she was asking. And I'm glad that you saw it, because I think it's very central to that Nabi Suma's character, that particular expression.
Do you think
In
that's quite
in fact,
misogynistic in itself, though? That
uh-huh.
we have such, do you think that's quite misogynistic in itself, though, that we have such high expectations of mothers? We expect them to be everything, whilst perhaps not appreciating them as much.
Well, motherhood is, I know it has its cultural limitations in India. I mean, I'm talking in the very specific context of India. I don't know how the Europe or America or other Far East Asian countries do fare. I don't know the mothers there, but I'm most certain that they have their agency is far more better than there is in India. Now, the second part of your question, I think motherhood in itself is an extremely, I think it is the human experience, most important human experience. It's the most important animal experience, actually. I always say to people that God was invented by some egotist male who couldn't accept the fact that children were coming out of a female body. So he discovered a non-existent male and said, "Look, woman, you are a deputy." Uh, but motherhood is man is an emotional. Human beings in general is an extremely emotional animal. Motherhood is the apogee of that experience, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Both from the mother, if we could relieve her from some of the emotion attached to it, if we could allow our mothers to relax a little and not make her live as our mother, but
Mm-hmm.
also as a woman in herself. I mean, it's very easy for me to say so, but I myself am so dependent on my mother. But not in any other way. But I live with my mother. Yeah,
Yeah,
I,
that's
I don't
interesting.
also position myself outside this system. Okay, I'm not a very righteous person. I improve myself. I self-critically think, but I don't think I have any superior moral vantage to offer commentary on motherhood. As I told you, I'm a very mother-dependent son.
But I think sometimes it's also just about having that awareness, isn't it? You're very aware that you're dependent on your mother, but I think some of the characters in the book are dependent on their mothers, but don't appreciate and aren't aware of that, which I think is more problematic.
Well, awareness that doesn't result in change is not. It's very as meaningless as unawareness or lack of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing about that novel is that almost all the characters are reliable. I haven't particularly made any character unreliable. They are
Mm-hmm.
reliable narrators, and Imran, for example, does speak about his relationship with his mother, how his mother takes care of the family. He even says that it's my house is much like an adult care center. This is Nebisuma's son who was saying it. So there is that self-awareness, there is that awareness. I believe that every perpetrator on earth is aware. There is nothing in human experience to suggest that someone who is doing something isn't aware of it. We are deeply aware. The awareness, is there. I mean, we are aware that even when we lie, very profoundly lie, we are aware that we are profoundly lie.
Yeah.
Human beings are extremely motivated animals.
It's very true.
Yeah. It can faint, but it does. When it faints, it does not hit, the edges. It falls flat on floor. Human beings are extremely dramatic and dishonest and motivated animals, which is why literature exists.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever revisit this community in another book, or do you think you're finished with them? Would you do a kind of a 5 years later book, or?
Well, I have every intention to keep writing novels. I also, at least some of my, for at least 4 projects of mine are going to be based on my town. Yeah.
Okay.
It's based in my town. Yeah. I mean, this is in my head, but I know what I'm going to do. I will do it. And if I can, I will continue to expand on that. But not in this particular community as such, but there are very different facets to it. It's just one way of it. This novel is an aspect of the society I would like to explore more. I have stories, and I intend to double down also on my habits of sitting down and staring at the blank screen. I'm sure that things will improve.
We'll look forward to it. Okay, we've got another reader question coming in. It says, "Oh, this is a big question. The thing that was very evident in the novel was that it had a postmodern approach to it. The characters were realistic, but you did not make them likable. You just made them real life characters. And the one thing that was impressive was that you showed the same incident through the lens of people from different age groups and genders, and still managed to encapsulate each and every emotion and thought from different characters. How did you manage to do that?"
Well, I'm a very dramatic person myself, so it's not very difficult for me to infuse certain characters with different sorts of emotions. I also believe that the novel. Look, the novel, when I conceived it, I haven't heard from someone else, but this is what I say, that our society is an extremely repressive society. I mean, in violently repressive society. So when somebody said that my work, that this particular book has is character seems to be overly emotional and dramatic, my answer is that this is very, very conscious. That in my opinion, what a violently repressive society needs is a language of release, and this is what I've given them. So Nebisuma, for example, the way she speaks, that I gave my children everything except sex. This is an outrageous statement, and it would outrage also someone who thinks that literature is a sphere where get to meet good people or good thoughts. So this is not our optimism on the surface is deeply flawed underneath. And the agreement on the surface, the language that we write has to threaten that agreement on the surface. When you think in these ways, I think the language you write also acquires a kind of intensity, and this may have percolated into the various characters and given them an emotional life, which was quintessential also to the craft.
I think characters need to have an emotional life, though, don't they? That's what connects the reader with the
But I
character.
do not want them to be repressed. I want them to speak as loudly as they can. which is why that usually, it's not standard. So when you write, I believe that you have to maneuver the emotional intensity, but I haven't cared for that, which is why many police intertone, the use of and or conjunction as such instead of commas occurs quite a lot there. Because that language, when you replace comma with conjunctions, um, there is a temp. Somebody called me. It's on phone. Hello.
Can you
It's
hear
on phone. Somebody called me, and I'm afraid that is my students. They might call again, but yeah.
That's okay. There's no
Yeah,
problem.
so use of police intertone is there because I wanted to give my characters not the sophisticated use of commas, which makes the speaker much more sophisticated, and I wanted them to use and as a conjunction instead of comma. That also gave the novel its pace. People say that it's pacey, so maybe it's pacey not only because the plot itself is pacey, but the sentence making also abandons commas for conjunctions.
I think it definitely feels pacey. It feels like even if you read it over a couple of days, it feels very fast paced. It feels there's that kind of chaotic energy to it, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to ask you kind of a couple more general questions, and then I'll let you go so that your students can get through to you. Um, what are your personal favorite books that you would recommend to us?
A novel.
Could be a novel, could be nonfiction.
Well, non-fiction is a I mean, I can talk about, I can tell you a few books that have influenced me very strongly. But non-fiction is, I mean, it's a vast area. I mean, and I have no influence with. I mean, you like non-fiction for the stuff being written. So the author is not particularly important in that respect. But I do read a lot of religion, classical history, etc. As such, I'm very influenced by American literature. 20th century American literature. I'm fascinated by Faulkner, especially his first four books, not first four, but the four early works, namely Absalom, and Sound and Fury, As I Lay Dying, and Light in August. I think everything else, except for short stories, everything else he wrote is trash. Yeah, but I mean, no great writer writes, or great books consistently. It's 4 or 5. That's it. And Don DeLillo is a great favorite of mine. I think he's also going to be the most visionary and most influential writer in the 21st century, because of his, not only he wrote the best sentences in the 20th century, I believe, but also his ability to engage the electronic world of electronics, the communication systems, the paranoia that is sitting in, etc., were visionary, and I believe is going to be more influential than he's currently is in the world. So his Underworld 1997 masterpiece, and Mao 2, Libra, White Noise. These 4 books were particularly influential. Thomas Pynchon, Gravity's Rainbow, Crying of Lot 49. I really like this author, A.B. Abraham Yehoshua, an Israeli writer. His particular book, a book called A Late Divorce, I think is a major accomplishment. I read it in translation, but in translation itself, it's such a great book. A Late Divorce. It's about an American who returns to Israel to reach a divorce settlement with his wife, and fails miserably. It's also on told from from multiple perspectives, or the
Okay,
7 narrators. Yeah,
that sounds
many
really good.
Philip Roth is also extremely good. Philip Roth, American Pastoral, Shabbat Theater, exemplary work. Nobody engaged men with more honesty than Philip Roth, I believe.
Mm. No, I definitely agree. Okay, so
Now
Priya
I think
said,
my data is also getting over.
oh no. Okay, so last question. Priya's got a question for you. I wonder if Priya wants to unmute and come on video to ask this question directly rather than me asking. Priya, would you like to ask this one directly?
Hi,
Hi,
Saharu,
Priya.
and hello, Jen. Thank you for the opportunity. I have this tiny question. The book it reminds me a lot of Chronicles of a Death Foretold. Was the connection? I mean, was it actually an inspiration, or was it just a coincidence?
I saw it in many reviews, but there is no connection. I also am not very interested in surreal fiction. My novel would clearly testify that,
Yeah, sure.
I'm
That is
very much
quite chaotic, as we Indians are.
yeah, but I haven't read Chronicle of a Death Foretold. I have only read one book by Marquez, 100 Years of Solitude, some 2 years ago. I read a review of Love in the Time of Cholera by Thomas Pynchon. I'm interested in reading it, but I haven't read it. But there are other writers in Latin America who I really admire, like Clarice Lispector, Machado de Assis. Borges was a very strong influence on me. He made me love literature, which is the best readers would make you. Yeah. So it's Vallejo, Neruda, the poets, Nicanor Parra. Yeah, but Marquez, I think, is a very formidable writer. But I think surrealism, if I have a capacity to ban it, I'll ban it. I don't really like surreal fiction. I mean, reality itself is too surreal that you don't have to invent flying snakes, etc. I mean, when you have such characters in real life, why do you go hunting this extraordinary? I mean, I think surrealist fiction. Where did it come from? I think it might have come from Thousand and One Nights, stories of Aladdin and yeah, etc. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
this
somewhere from speculative fiction, it just popped up. Even I find it a bit, disturbing at times. Some books are really.
No. I read 100 Years of Solitude. It's a formidable
Yeah.
achievement. I'm just saying that I don't really like surreal fiction writers. I don't also respect them much. I think they're okay. I mean, let them do it, but I don't worry much about it. There is fantasy fiction. I mean, if you're doing, Borges wrote fantastic fiction, so I really love I like what's her name? The author of The Left Hand of Darkness. What's her name? The American, great American writer, lady. She died recently.
What's the title? The Left Hand of
Darkness.
Darkness. Oh, Ursula Le
Lesbian.
Guin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find her very great.
Right. Before you can ban anything else, because you've already banned WhatsApp, you've banned
Not bad,
speculative
but I find it
fiction.
very. I don't really register any use for being surreal. You can
Yeah.
just really say as it is. It's in itself a very surreal reality.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to us. I know that we've got quite a few people from our read-along group who are really keen to watch this back, but who haven't been able to get online for various reasons. So, as I say, we've recorded this and I will make it available so that everybody can watch back. And it's been so good talking to you. It's been really fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the questions also. Very incisive questions.
No,
Thank you.
Usually I'm very worried about the questions because I don't think there is any real critical contribution author can make, a novelist can make into his novel. It's not a non-fiction book, but I really enjoyed talking, and yeah, thank you for having me.
No, brilliant. We'll look forward to whatever you come out with next. Thank you so much.
Thank you.